second most popular question I get, which is how do you get more clients? So after you jumped into this model, how do you market yourself? You up until the opening your own gym, it seems like you were mostly word of mouth, and then obviously the patients that you were working with that converted over. It sounds like your theory was PT becomes a loss leader that gets people in the door. Um, but how is your overall marketing strategy work, and what seems to be working well, and what are you still tinkering with?
You know, I've tried different things. I mean, certainly the most the thing that works the most is word of mouth. Like that's ultimately a number one. Like it doesn't cost anything, and usually if it's their best friend that's going to say, "Hey, look, you need to go see Jeremy or Andrew or whoever," that person's usually definitely going to follow up. For me, and I think it's probably because of our client and patient population. Our clients and patients tend to be older. Not that I want to just stick with that. It's just by default, it's kind of where we're at. Although we are starting to see some changes in the demographic here lately. Towards it, we've kind of expanded a little bit, and I think we're starting to get a little bit some younger populations in there. Well, I'd like to see that grow.
Well, just overall marketing strategy. How do you? I mean, it's real basic blocking and tackling here. You got a
Oh, yeah,
website. You're using word of mouth. Do you have like a
yeah,
referral system?
yeah. So word of mouth is the biggest one. I've tried.
How do you
Not
encourage that?
even
Is there something that you do that helps generate more word of mouth? Do you concretely ask them, "Hey, is there anybody you know?" Um,
So on paper, like our population is a little bit higher income. They're older, so they're retired, so they've got the discretionary income. And plus, like health ranks high on their priority list.
mhm.
And so all those things kind of work in our favor. They're not really motivated by discounts. Like if I said, "Hey, look, I'm going to offer 20% off if you want to refer somebody." I mean, they're okay. Like they're not, that's not going to all of a sudden, that's not their barrier for not sending somebody. And honestly, I
Right.
think I suspect that sometimes the clients with certain demographics like being exclusive. So I kind of wonder if sometimes they
Uh,
intentionally don't tell their friends because they want
yeah.
to be doing something. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's, I've just thought about it a few times, but yeah, I've tried Instagram. I've had somebody run my social media accounts before. I invested thousands of dollars into that and I got zero return on it. And I think part of that is that's not my demographic, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I've hired somebody I tried some blog stuff in the beginning and I was honestly just throwing spaghetti at the wall to kind of see what stuck in the beginning.
Do you have any like community events or in-person events that you
We've
do?
done we've done open houses before, that's helped out. So the biggest thing, just something about the facility I'm at. So there's a detached, so the building I'm in, we've got the main building that sits on the main street and right on the main street. And behind it, and this building was built in like the 20s. And right behind it is a detached building that I think back in the 1920s, this building used to be like an appliance repair place. And there was a building built in the back, which was just like a detached garage. That's what I originally rented. And
Mm,
so I was not on the main street. And so people could not see that I was even there. Right.
mhm.
So, if you look at from a marketing standpoint, what's some of the low-hanging fruit that you can get? It's like, hey, let's get a sign on the street. Let's try to, it worked out well because I was bootstrapping in the beginning, but it got to a point where I was like, I got to do something. I can't grow to the level I want to grow in this back room, essentially. And
Right.
so I approached Scott, the owner of the fitness business. Long story short, I've since taken his business over and he's merged under me. And now I mean, just within the past few weeks, I've got my sign on the main building now. I've absorbed all of his clients, which is about 60 or 70 clients. And so we're working through all that now. So there are some local even like I don't know if I'm sure most cities have this like little health and fitness magazines, little
Mhm.
circulars that go around. They put them in the grocery stores. They it's, they'll put somebody local, the local runner, on the cover of it. On every
Sure.
issue and stuff comes out monthly. So, we're planning on reaching out to them. To be honest, I haven't pushed marketing a ton. I'm growing at a rate that I'm comfortable with right now.
Mm.
A couple of new clients a month, really trying to manage attrition as much as possible.
Do you know what your churn numbers are roughly?
Um, Up to this point, I don't have them calculated off the top of my head right
But you
now
can grow with one or two a month.
for now.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're at this crossroads now where, you and I talked earlier before we started recording about the system that we have in place that is a very cumbersome system.
Yeah.
And what I'm a little scared of sometimes, and maybe I'll admit that, um, maybe it's not the right way to feel, but I feel that I'm a little scared to market myself too much to look, maybe an advertisement in the newspaper or something, because I just need to make sure that if clients start coming in, I've got good coaches I can send these clients to, because I'm at a point where I can take on more, but it's not sustainable for me to continue to take on clients as I need to start focus on bigger picture issues. I have started a podcast myself.
Mm.
Uh, and so that's one thing that I'm not a social media person. Like
Mm.
that's just, I'm not one of I wish I was. Like, I mean, really, I do, because then posting stuff would be just second nature to me. I'm jealous of people that do that. And admittedly, I don't. I know I'm leaving, money on the table,
Mm.
by not doing that to the degree I should. But I really do enjoy doing podcasts, regardless of if it's crap or not. But I like it, and I like just talking about the issues. And we have plans on getting our clients on there. So going down that road, trying to just increase the financial footprint of our current clients that are within the business. So like I think there's two conversations. There's the conversation of let's get people from the outside into the doors. And then there's the conversation of let's increase the financial footprint of each client that's in here.
Mm.
So like, is that client using our physical therapy services if they're having issues? Can we come up with other cash-based physical therapy services that we could be doing? So like dry needling, and just, there's other options that we've talked about, various assessments and stuff like that we could do for fall risks and stuff. Um, but are there other things that we can do to try to increase that financial footprint a little bit more? So I'm currently just in the state of just reevaluating some of those priorities and really just kind of creating a priority list and start just checking those off. The biggest things that were on my list up until a month ago was get transitioned into the new building. I've just bought a bunch of new equipment, and that all was delivered early or mid-December. So get the sign on the building. So like those were all on my punch list, and I've kind
Mm.
of checked those off. So now I'm getting through this software program. We're getting the financials all figured out. So the next step is, reaching out to maybe some of the circulars that go around, and just some internal marketing through email campaigns, using the podcast as a way to try to just and really the audience for some of the podcasts is to our current clients in the clinic, to just help kind of them get to know us. Cause I think that
Mm.
one of the barriers of people utilizing, like, say, cash-based physical therapy services is just having a relationship, some type of relationship with that person. It's not always just money's not always the barrier. So I think as a way to help just get because now, I mean, we've got with everybody 80 or so clients, and honestly, I don't know all of them because we just took
Right.
over. So I've just got to get my face in front of them.
Last question. You mentioned if you could, well, I'll paraphrase here. If you could do it over again, you would have started with subscriptions at the beginning, right? Or that's something that you just feel like is a no-brainer at this point. Is there anything specific to running a strength facility that has physical therapy, the model that you've got right now? Is there anything that you're doing now that you wish you had done sooner, or that you would recommend somebody who was interested in doing that from the beginning? Or it doesn't have to be something that changed, something that you really like, the way that you do it, that's specific to that business model.
Yeah, I mean, I think flat rates is number one,
Yeah.
right? So just like you said, that subscription service, that's kind of the
Hmm.
biggest thing I think overall. Other things, just, you know, being efficient with how you schedule. So whether you're doing one-on-ones or whether you're doing groups. So in other words, if you are charging $100 an hour and you see 4 clients, you want to average $100 an hour. If you work 6 hours to see 4 clients, you're not making $100 an hour, you
Right.
know? So like be smart with how you schedule your clients. Try to and stick to your guns. Like I know it sounds bad, but you know, I think in the beginning, a client would say, "Hey, I can't, or normal times at 10 o'clock this morning. I can't do it. Can I come at 2?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, come at 2." And I would just really bend and before you knew it, I'm there for 8 hours seeing like 4 people.
Yeah.
And I was kind of scared and just I didn't want to say no to people. But then over time, I found out or figured out that, and I don't want my clients to hear some of this, but like, I want to, this sounds bad. But I want them to inconvenience themselves before they inconvenience me. Meaning,
Mm.
like, you have to set the schedule. There's a reason why Costco closes at 8 o'clock, right? Like Costco's not going to open at 9 o'clock just because I want it to open up at 9 o'clock. They're closed at 8.
Mhm.
So if they're wanting to reschedule me in order to go to their hair appointment, like that's not a me issue. That's a
Right.
you issue, right?
Right.
But don't project that onto me. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, again, that is depends on the relationship of the person, that
Yeah.
you have with the person and everything. But I would just, try to safeguard your schedule, try to schedule, tell yourself if you want to work from 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock that day, stick to your guns. If somebody's saying your 11 o'clock client is saying, "Hey, I can't make it at 11, can I come at 1?" And you're done at 1, say, "No, I can't." Because whether they realize it or not, people will take advantage of your flexibility.
Mm.
If they know that you're somebody that's going to reschedule that they can reschedule on, it's like, "Oh, it's hard to get into my hair appointments, but you know what? Jeremy's always pretty
Hmm.
flexible with me. I'm going to reschedule him." You're going to do it every single time. They're always going to be
Yeah.
relying on that. So you have to just, even if you're not that busy, you've got to pretend like you're busier,
Right.
in order for them to make you a priority in their life.
So I'm going back on what I said earlier, the last question, because I'm gonna try to focus this one even more on the physical therapy. Because I think that's excellent advice. Though I think it's excellent advice for anybody. I'm curious. I'm gonna kind of see if I can drill into a more PT specific one. Is there anything you've learned along the way about transitioning somebody from a PT client to a strength client? I know you mentioned it's a harder transition than you thought initially. Can you maybe talk a little bit more on that? What's worked well or what you've learned doesn't actually work very well?
So transitioning a PT client to a strength client and what works
Yeah.
and what doesn't
Or that
work.
model of it being your sort of foot in the door to a strength client.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a PT and your goal is to transition that person from a PT client to a strength client, like, there's, let's say somebody's got a shoulder issue and they're there, you know, uh, for PT. You go through your exercises. The traditional PT client pulls out the bands and they're doing the rotator cuff, internal and external rotations, whatever. Starting if you're a strength coach and you're doing barbell lifts, like start incorporating those lifts into your treatments, because a way that they're test driving the car when they're doing those things. And it's not okay, we're doing PT and now we're going to do a total 180 and now we're doing strength training, like you
Right.
blur those lines a little bit. And that you're selling yourself when you do that, and like it so if they do decide to come on board also, like again, they're not as maybe nervous with it anymore. It helps also just I remember I worked with a business coach in the beginning and he was always like, what makes you a disruptor? Why are you any different than any
Mm.
gym, than any PT clinic, and it's just, from the standpoint, or rather a PT clinic standpoint. I mean, most PTs aren't doing those kind of things. So I think
Right.
just trying to get out of the traditional mindset of just what PTs do and what exercises they normally utilize. And using the regular strength training exercises as some component at least of your rehab.
Right.
I mean, sometimes obviously you can't always start out with a bench press or an overhead press, but that can be the last, maybe exercise in the continuum, like
Hmm.
maybe you're starting with your passive stuff and you're doing your kind of traditional rotator cuff stuff, and you're now kind of transitioning them to eventually do overhead presses and bench presses and stuff. So I would say just blurring those lines a little bit intentionally.
Awesome.
That answer
Well,
your question?
Jeremy, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
I know
man.
this was a popular request. If folks want to get in touch with you or find you out there in the universe, what's the best way to look you up?
Just shoot me an email. We have a website too. And we've got to update the website a little bit, but
What's
www.cairnstrength.com is the website. My email is jbradford, Bradford, at cairnstrength.com. And shoot me an email. And I've had other people email me, and I'm happy to email back and forth or chat for a conversation or whatever.
and that
So
Karen is Cairn, right?
it is. And I was impressed that you pronounced it correctly because most people can't, That was part of the
All
marketing strategy too.
right. Yeah, make it an email address that nobody can spell.
Right,
Uh,
right.